From a major lapse in management to broken communication, this rightfully earned its place as the worst family-run restaurant to ever be featured on Kitchen Nightmares. And you're about to see why.
I told you so many times you don't take it away from me.
When did you tell me?
No, when the falafel is dry and
The
was
falafel
burned,
was
I
perfect.
got-
So, Chef Ramsay headed to Redondo Beach, California, where Zaina's Flaming Grill, a once promising Mediterranean family restaurant, was facing some troubling times.
It should never be like this.
But here's the thing. The two owners, Faye and Brenda, who by the way also happened to be aunt and niece, couldn't see eye to eye. However, I guess Chef Ramsay's efforts finally paid off because Zaina is not only open but also active on social media to this very day. Yeah, they've been posting pictures and updates of these jaw-dropping delicacies that show they've come a long way since their Kitchen Nightmares debut. But wait, what's this? Turns out Zaina has a new owner, Ray Eunice. So what exactly happened to Faye and Brenda? I'll get to that in a bit, but first, let me tell you a little about Faye, or Faiza Georges. This woman, who seemed to be worn out by the pressure of running her restaurant, first immigrated to the US from Egypt at the age of 18. She was in fact tricked by her sister to come to California. However, she decided to turn her displeasure into an opportunity and earned a degree in business administration. What followed next was a swift move into the food industry where she opened her own food truck. With passion and determination, the food truck grew into a brick-and-mortar restaurant that came to be known as Zaina's Flaming Grill. While Faye had the skills to run the kitchen, Brenda, Faye's niece, had the yearning to own her own business. Put together, the two of them became a team and established the restaurant to bring both of their dreams to life. But that's not what happened. Remember how Chef Ramsay was greeted with a peculiar prelude? Both Faye and Brenda requested to meet him before he even set foot in the restaurant.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Likewise. Good to see you too.
It's an honor to meet you.
While the famous chef used this opportunity as a stage to explore the issues plaguing the restaurant, he was in for a rude awakening.
I want to tell you some issues that I have with my business partner,
Okay,
my
great.
niece, Brenda.
Well, Faye claimed that she not only cooked, but also cleaned, shopped, and managed the restaurant all day long. But as for Brenda,
How does Brenda do?
when Chef Ramsay engaged in a private conversation with Brenda, the tensions within the partnership became apparent.
She's definitely a control freak. She doesn't have confidence in me stepping into the kitchen and being able to help her out.
Despite being 50-50 partners, Brenda felt relegated to a secondary role, with Faye monopolizing the kitchen responsibilities. The dynamics between the two owners was stained, with Brenda expressing her frustration at not being treated like a partner.
Sometimes feel like I'm an employee, not an equal.
But the famous chef decided to stay and dig deeper into the functioning, or well, dysfunctioning, of the restaurant. And while talking about being a hands-on cook, Faye rated herself a 10 out of 10 and Brenda a 6. I don't know, I'm sensing a little bias there. Anyway, with two owners, each of them with their own contrasting ideas that clashed with each other, it was a surprise that the restaurant had managed to keep its doors open for as long as they had.
I feel like it's a disaster.
How do you know this is a
The
disaster?
customer come to me and tell me.
The next thing that surfaced, the financial struggles came to light as both owners disclosed that they had invested 60 grand each into the business. But the gap in communication and understanding was greatly impacting the restaurant's performance, and not in a good way.
How long can the business continue?
I'm giving myself about a year.
Each of the owners were faced with the fear of failure. And while Brenda was more concerned about the financial status, the consequences were more personal for Faye.
I'm afraid and scared that I will lose this in this time of my life.
Now, Chef Ramsay faced a formidable task. He not only had to alter the dynamics between Faye and Brenda, but also had to boost their confidence and salvage a sinking ship. This was all at the same time. I don't envy the guy, I'll tell you that much. Chef Ramsay began his mission by delving into the heart of the restaurant, the food. And this is what they claimed to serve.
So fresh, flavorful food 7 days a week.
But would they live up to the promise? As he sat down, he struck up a conversation with the server who had been working at the restaurant right from the start. And she helped shed light on the situation with the owners.
Brenda's more laid back. She prefers more talking to the customers.
Well, clearly, Faye took a more dominant role while Brenda stuck with keeping the customers engaged. But referring to Faye as the scary boss definitely didn't paint her in a good light.
Faye has an extremely short temper. If something goes wrong, all hell will break loose.
The revelation that Faye, although being the driving force behind the restaurant, had a tendency to yell in the dining room was far from a feather in their cap. But as Chef Ramsay continued to investigate, his eyes fell on an obvious mistake in the menu.
An exquisite dinning adventure. Wow.
Yeah, I really don't think anyone ever noticed that little lapse in spelling before Chef Ramsay even pointed it out.
Dining is D-I-N-I-N-G.
Okay.
Anyway, that would soon be one of the least concerning missteps of the restaurant, because Chef Ramsay prepared himself to assess the culinary prowess of Zaina's Flaming Grill. And what did he find? He encountered an alarming revelation about the excessive use of oil in their combination appetizer. And yeah, he had a valid question to ask in the aftermath.
Usually drizzle the top of our appetizers with olive oil.
Or flood.
Chef Ramsay asked the server to get him another dish to drain the bathtub of oil into, but meanwhile, this is what happened.
Can you ask Mark very carefully to stop staring at me because he's scary. He just stands there and stares.
Yeah, Mark, Faye's son, who also helped around the restaurant, wasn't making Chef Ramsay's dining experience any more pleasant. As for the greasy hummus, while Faye stood back in regret, Brenda claimed that she knew better.
So for Chef Ramsay not to like it is a shocker to me.
Amidst a background of tension between the owners, the casual reference to disgusting customization made it clear that nobody was on the same page. But the famous chef was only getting started. As he waited for his next dish, his attention was drawn towards the absurdity of how they washed their dishes.
Disgusting busing station that looks dreadful. There has to be a much better place to put dirty dishes than that.
Yeah, imagine sitting down for a meal and having to see that disgusting sight. Not exactly fine dining anymore, huh? But guess what? Chef Ramsay's blunt critique of the baba ganoush called it for what it was, a wet diaper. Now just wait till you see what the famous chef had to say about the fava beans.
Looks like someone's puked up on my plate. Does that look appetizing to you?
Yeah.
A 10 on 10, Faye? Is that what you said? Chef Ramsay was shocked at the subpar quality of food being served at this restaurant, especially with a banner hanging outside claiming just the opposite. Despite their initial resistance, the owners were forced to confront their shortcomings in their dishes. As the episode unfolded, it became evident that Zaina's Flaming Grill was grappling not just with culinary challenges, but also with internal conflicts. The clash between the owners' perception of their food and Chef Ramsay's unfiltered feedback intensified as the famous chef decided to lay down the truth.
The atmosphere's flat, decor's drab. I'm sat on the corner of a ridiculous cushion.
Chef Ramsay also pointed out the unconventional use of buckets in the dining area, causing a moment of disbelief. The exchange with Brenda about the bucket placement unveiled a practice that, despite being regular for the staff, seemed unusual and disconcerting for Chef Ramsay.
They fill them and
customers.
they walk inside the kitchen with them.
But we have been told to use a bucket.
The problems at the restaurant clearly extended beyond their culinary skills. When it came to the hummus, Chef Ramsay voiced his disappointment loud and clear.
It was olive oil. Wow, that must be cheap. What's funny?
In truth, the famous chef was bordering on frustration with the disconnect between the owner's perception of their food and the reality of its quality. To make things worse, if Mark's creepy stares weren't enough, he decided to break into a fit of laughter at the worst possible moment. And no, Chef Ramsay wasn't having it.
You sit there on your ass, laughing your head off, thinking it's funny.
Anyway, Chef Ramsay decided to ignore him for the rest of the evening and proceeded to share his feedback about the kofta. Now, let me remind you, this was the restaurant's supposed bestseller.
But this is #1 seller. This is what my customer eats every time they walk in.
But for a bestseller, I don't know, I'm just not seeing it. Chef Ramsay even questioned the ingredients they were buying.
How long have you been functioning like this?
18 months to a year.
It's been like this since day one.
The final question about who wasn't pulling their weight introduced a deeper issue, the perception of effort within the restaurant.
Who's not pulling their weight?
None of them.
You don't let anybody help you.
Eventually, Chef Ramsay launched him into an extensive investigation about everything the restaurant was doing.
I don't usually hurt myself.
I need a bandage. Every day a man needs a bandage.
Anyway, in the aftermath of the blame game, Chef Ramsay listened as Brenda voiced her side of the story. The rift between them was more evident than ever as they disputed each other's levels of involvement in the kitchen.
Many times.
No, that's a lie. And
Many
you know
times.
that.
It's
No,
not a
that's
lie. I have always stand with you.
Despite Brenda's attempt to bridge the gap and learn, Faye's apparent resistance to collaboration surfaced as a key issue.
You've not been shown the recipes?
No.
As Brenda recounted a customer complaining about Faye's cooking, the atmosphere thickened with dissatisfaction. This issue went far beyond the kitchen. It was about trust, cooperation, and effective leadership with a family-owned business. What's more, the discussion about injuries and bandages brought attention to how even the most basic safety standards weren't being taken into consideration. The servers claimed that she wasn't even getting paid for any of the extra responsibilities thrust upon her really made the gross negligence pervading this place abundantly clear.
I don't get paid any extra to do anything, but as a family, we do it.
And as the impromptu meeting progressed, the web of accusations continued to grow.
By far, she does way more of her duties more than anybody else knows.
They couldn't even figure out if they wanted the TV on or off. If they couldn't figure that out, how could they possibly figure out how they could run their business?
Walk out like you always do.
When you're here for 5 hours?
No, I'm not here for 5 hours. You are.
By this time, Chef Ramsay had seen enough. He gave them a direct order to just do what you normally do with an intent to observe the natural flow of operations. Meanwhile, the famous chef stepped out to get some fresh air and break free from the chaos he just witnessed. He'd definitely be needing that break if he intended to take on the tasks ahead.
Wow. And I thought the problems were just the food.
Chef Ramsay needed to start from the bottom up if he wanted to fix the food the customers were getting. So the focus shifted from the kitchen to the overall management, communication, and work culture issues. But after the famous chef took his leave, the family engaged in a discussion of their own. Mark really pushed the idea of needing to maintain a positive atmosphere to keep things moving smoothly. And while nobody here is perfect was definitely true, they were gonna need to try a lot harder to get along if they wanted to keep the lights on. Nobody pulling their weight would need to be a thing of the past and fast.
Her mouth, yes, I agree. When it comes to her work, she goes the extra mile.
The fact that they weren't getting any complaints from customers didn't help matters much either. And it aligned perfectly with Chef Ramsay's observation that the staff rarely receive appreciation from the management. Ironically, the one thing they did agree on was the significant problem with the food.
Anybody want to eat frozen food?
I'm glad you're laughing about it.
Fast forward to the evening, the dinner service was underway and Chef Ramsay was back to scrutinizing the kitchen operations. Chef Ramsay was looking for an explanation for how the kitchen line functioned, all while highlighting the importance of efficiency and clarity in communication. As the tickets started flying in, Chef Ramsay was watching the preparation process like a hawk. He could not afford to let a single detail slip past him.
Thank you. Fresh food, 7 days a week, my ass.
But when a bunch of dissatisfied customers rolled through with their complaints, it was abundantly clear how their words had fallen on deaf ears before. Chef Ramsay decided to step in and understand their concerns, and guess what he did?
I'll show them how good the hummus is. Mum's the word. Mum's the word. Yes.
Yup, he made a quick trip to a nearby supermarket and came back with a whole load of containers of delicious hummus. And well, the customers loved the pre-made stuff far more than the so-called fresh stuff Zainaz was dishing out.
How was that?
Very good. This is better.
But the famous chef kept finding far more issues than he'd expected to run into.
Chicken shawarma tasted like rubbery.
Okay.
And this was like vinegary and mushy.
From raw beef and poorly executed dishes, Zaina was nowhere near perfect.
These are medium. If I cook them more, they will not be medium anymore.
After the customer's clear verdict on that particular dinner service, Chef Ramsay decided to inspect the rest of the kitchen. He delved into the storage, freezers, and food preparation. And what do you think he found?
No date. My God. Ugh, disgusting.
Yeah, if you were expecting anything but frozen food, I don't know what to tell you. Chef Ramsay then laid it out in no uncertain terms how their food was flawed even before a prep cook got their hands on the raw ingredients. And considering how they were advertising that their food was fresh and high quality, Chef Ramsay was beyond through with the place.
They say fresh, flavorful food. My ass. I say frozen, frozen, frozen.
The famous chef had seen enough. He then confronted the owners about the issues, hoping for some much-needed honesty and self-reflection.
Your customers were complaining about the hummus, the dips. They weren't very excited, so I went and made some.
The discussion about complaints from customers further pushed Chef Ramsay in his insistence on accountability within the kitchen.
You need to be 10 times better than store-bought hummus. Otherwise, what's the point in running a restaurant?
After that disastrous service, Chef Ramsay called for a meeting that became a forum for the staff. This also included family members to confront each other about their responsibilities. And Faye finally got around to understanding the gravity of the situation.
Tonight was a shock to me. Why everything is coming back?
Better late than never, I guess. However, that didn't change the fact that Chef Ramsay was disappointed with the quality of the dishes, pointing out the dry kofta, overcooked chicken, and tasteless meat. But would he really be able to mediate between Faye and Brenda and pull off a miracle by salvaging the place? Or would the conflict force one of them out of the business?
Do you want this business to continue?
There's no point of running this.
Well, given I've mentioned how the place is still open today, Chef Ramsay obviously figured it out. But let's find out how. He challenged the owners to comprehend the severity of their situation, urging them to get real about the reasons customers were not returning. He questioned the owners' commitment and forced them to face the reality of how everything they were doing was wrong. They were all gonna suffer for it if things didn't turn around and quickly.
I trust her, but I don't trust her. Does she not welcome help?
Chef Ramsay just challenged Faye to trust her staff. The intense exercise involved putting Brenda in charge for a lunch service under Faye's watchful eye. The tension was palpable as Chef Ramsay orchestrated this experiment to prove that the restaurant could actually function without Faye's micromanagement.
If you were not family, 1, 2, 3, 4 of you be fired.
As the lunch service kicked off, tensions rose in the kitchen. Chef Ramsay was really impressed with Brenda's capability to handle the kitchen and commended her for it. This experiment proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to Faye that trust in her team was essential for the restaurant's success. She acknowledged the hard work her team had been putting in and expressed a newfound appreciation for Brenda's role too. And this was their route to finally have the place turn over a new leaf.
Brenda seems to be in charge now. I'm proud of her.
Now, with Zaina's problematic underbelly finally starting to heal, he got to work on the relaunch at the Redondo Pier. This event aimed to reintroduce Zaina's Flaming Grill to the community and address the critical issue of the restaurant's lack of visibility.
When you said fresh, it means really fresh. It doesn't mean it's frozen fresh.
The stage was set for a relaunch, and the next part promised to be a dynamic journey of transformation, with Chef Ramsay guiding Faye and Brenda toward a collaborative and successful future.
Here we go. Enjoy.
A delicious shrimp kebab with tzatziki sauce.
And well, the relaunch night arrived, and the new and improved Zaina's Flaming Grill was fully booked. Chef Ramsay implemented a dual shift system in the kitchen, with Faye and Brenda working side by side. This really strategic move aimed to improve communication and efficiency. However, like with any new plan being put into practice, there were a few hiccups.
Are we good on rice? Do we need rice, Faye?
Hey, talk to Brenda.
But Brenda stepped up as a leader. What's more, the new menu featuring fresh and flavorful Mediterranean dishes finally received positive feedback from customers. The relaunch was a success.
We got each other's back. We're a team.
I am very proud of Brenda tonight.
In the aftermath, Chef Ramsay reflected on the progress the owners, the staff, and himself had made. The staff's improved communication, Brenda's leadership, and positive customer feedback demonstrated the potential for a successful future. Chef Ramsay, however, expressed concern about Faye reverting to old habits without his supervision.
My only hope now is that Faye really understands she's not in this alone.
Although the fate of Zaina's Flaming Grill hung in the balance, there's no doubt that Chef Ramsay's intervention had put positive changes into motion. But the question remained, could Faye really sustain this transformation and overcome her stubbornness? Now, let me finally get into what happened after Chef Ramsay left. Simply said, the aftermath was a mixed bag. Faye, unfortunately but very predictably, reverted to her previous controlling and overbearing demeanor. And I mean, it was kind of inevitable.
The chicken is not done.
Vanessa and Amel were unable to cope with the persisting issues and decided to part ways with the restaurant, taking their talents with them. Brenda, however, maintained a degree of authority and tried her best to keep things moving.
Keep it up. You're doing good.
As reviews started pouring in, some were great and others not so much. Positive reviews praised the restaurant's ambiance and flavors, but negative feedback highlighted persistent issues like subpar service and occasional issues with the food customers were getting. Meanwhile, Brenda got married just a year after the transfer of ownership and somehow didn't think it was important to update her LinkedIn page after her time at Zaina's? Priorities, huh? On the other hand, Faye decided to strike out on her own as a private chef. Now, if you're planning to visit Zaina's Flaming Grill and see how they're doing today, make sure to visit the new location. The one where the episode was shot had to be closed down due to some issues with the landlord. That's all too common these days, but don't worry. Even though they have relocated, they haven't moved too far away from Redondo Beach. So, what's your take on all this? Make sure to let me know in the comments section down below. And if you thought this video was interesting, make sure to leave me a like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell notification so you're notified as soon as my latest video drops. And check out my social media pages if you want to keep up with me every step of the way. But wait, I've got another mind-blowing video right here. Believe me, it's even crazier.